Good evening, everyone. Here is Bruce Newman from Bruce Newman's Academy. We're gonna have a quite interesting episode today. We are receiving Lea Perfetti for this topic that we did approach already, but we're gonna delve into that this time. And collective consciousness is switching, and we are entering the era of the Aquarius. So there is many ways to consider this change, which is for many quite overwhelming. Here we're going to try to consider the influence of the planets. Lea is an astrologer. She's a mentor, spiritual mentor, and a yoga teacher since a long time. She has a lot of experience, and she gonna reveal some secrets that few people are expressing at the moment, notably the facts that Pluto is entering on Aquarius, and it's gonna lead us to some very peculiar influence for the next upcoming 20 years. Lea, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me.
So, you're an astrologer, you're a spiritual mentor, you're taking care of, cannot name them, but you're taking care of a lot of very important people. The world is changing, and our society is changing as well. So planets have an influence. What can we say already about that, like this global influence?
Well, I think it's important to explain a little bit astrology. So when you understand these planetary movements, you understand what's going on. And me as an astrologer, I see like humanity from the individual to the collective being reflected in the sky. Like we're one. So whatever's going on, whatever movements are happening on Earth, you can see that story celestial, right? So it's like this mirror that's going on. So as society is moving forward, we're seeing this reflected in the sky, and the sky is also reflecting that on us, right? So it's telling our story simultaneously. And as you were talking about, Pluto just entered into Aquarius for the first time since the French Revolution, actually. So a really long time. And it was retrograding last year from Capricorn to Aquarius, which means that due to like the way things look, it looks like it goes backwards and then it goes forward. And then around the end of last year, it entered completely into Aquarius, where it will stay for the next, couple 20 years or so. And I think we feel that on a global level. We're reflecting that on a global level.
So what does it mean properly? Which kind of influence would we have to bear from now on?
So for me, Pluto and Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius is really, really connected to the collective. It's like community. It's the people, right? So the fact that the farthest planet in the solar system has entered into that sign in Pluto is related to Scorpio, okay? It's related to transformation. In a natal chart, it's related to the 8th house. It's the house of life and death. Scorpio is the sign that is more closely linked to life and death. So that means to me, symbolically, that the collective is going to go under some sort of massive transformation. There will be a call to death, symbolically, to make a rebirth happen, if that makes sense. So
But
people are going to be
I
forced to change.
thought that after all this events for the last 5 years, this call to life already occurred.
I think that there's still a sensation of things that are going to be eliminated before there's this great birth.
Okay. So somehow there is a collective trauma happened, and it has to be digested.
Mhm.
Could we?
Well, I'd say it has to be identified first, right? And
Uh-huh.
then once it's identified, then we can digest it and then we can work with it, which would be ultimately the transformation. So I think like we all see this now. I mean, the only thing anyone talks about online is trauma, right? I mean, you and I know 15 years ago, no one talked about trauma really. Yeah, 20 years ago, we didn't talk about trauma. Now it's the only thing you see, and every meme is about trauma. So the people are expressing this. They're like, hey, look at this. This is what I'm feeling. This has to be seen.
So can we say somehow that the mysterious mechanisms of the collective as a part of our civilization is gonna be unveiled.
Yes,
Gonna ah
for sure. Yeah, I mean, you're making a very good point that, right? It's like when trauma comes out, the truth comes out, right? And that's what the unveiling is, right? Unveiling is the truth coming out. But to know the truth, we have to say the truth. And when Pluto was in Capricorn, Capricorn is the sign of Saturn. It's a lot of control. It's a lot of like preparation and being pragmatic and overthinking things, right? So the trauma couldn't fully come out, right? Because there was a sense of control. It's like the sense of the father. Capricorn is the father. It's Saturn. It's like we have to continue things as they are. And when it goes into Aquarius, which is related to Uranus, suddenly it's like everything's spontaneous. You can't control it. The train already took off, right? There's no stopping it now.
So from this point of view, as an astrologer, you can foresee all these changes,
Sure, there's
but but,
no way to stop it.
but yet can you can you point the peculiarities of these changes, meaning that we are we're a witness of this civilization in full transformation. We thought 5 years ago that we were running towards some global leading organization, that the authority are going to become worldwide. And we are understanding now that for the next 20 years, most likely, it's going to be the exact opposite, meaning that the different civilizational blocks gonna be separated and divided, and it's gonna be sorted through tribes. There is the Indian tribe, the Chinese tribe, the Russian tribe, which is an empire, and there is the Western world. They all, and the of course the Arabic tribe, including Qatar, South Arabia, and all the countries which are dealing with the petroleum and the energy. All these tribes have their own system, their own values, their own way to communicate and organize themselves.
Well, I think too what's coming to me is that the the last, I don't know how many years back, we've been under a lot of constraints. There was a sensation of constraints. Things run this way. We follow these rules. We need this to survive. You know, I don't want to talk about capitalism, but of course it took over, right?
We can slightly talk about
Yeah, I
capitalism.
don't
I
I don't
mean,
want to go too deep in it, but you and I know that we're under a very money ruled society right now, right? And I think part of Pluto going into Aquarius is that people are tired. Okay. I can see, for example, I was mentioning this to you the other day that I had left the United States 25 years ago and I came back now. And when I left 25 years ago, I didn't even know people who traveled abroad. Think, of course they did, and there were people that did, but it was like not many people that I knew firsthand did. And now I come back to the US after so many years and I hear everybody saying how they want to leave the United States. And 100 years ago, everybody wanted to come into the United States, right? Because that was the country of plenty, right? That's why everyone went there.
So they want to leave already because they don't see much opportunities anymore.
What I understand is they think that it's too demanding economically here. They could go elsewhere. A lot of people work remote, so they can work from wherever they want. And if they go to live in Europe or Southern Europe, the price of life is significantly lower. And so that they can have a higher state of living for cheaper. So they're going back, you know what I mean? Because as you know, all the immigrants came to the US to start the life of plenty, and now they're all going back to the old world, or they want to. I'd never heard of this before.
Actually, it's what happened in London. 20 years ago, London was quite colorful and it was extremely multicultural, but in the way that all the countries of all Eastern countries were there, and all the countries of the south of Europe as well. A lot of people from Hungary, Czech Republic, Spain, Italy, and so forth. And now, especially concerning the Eastern countries, they all moved back. So the city changed, and you don't have this sparkling atmosphere anymore in London. The atmosphere is excruciatingly heavy. Would it be the same in you're not far from New York? Would it be the same in New York?
I mean, I don't know. I'm in upstate New York, so I don't know what's happening in New York City exactly. But when I give you this information, it's like a lot of clients from around the United States, very liberal clients. A lot of them are very liberal. And there's this idea that there's more freedom back in Europe again, compared to the United States, that the United States became this oppressive space where no one has freedom and they just have to work and pay bills. And it's like they're driven to want to experience life again, life meaning drinking your coffee slowly, having ritualistic dinners, drinking your wine. So this is the feeling I get from the people. They're starting to want to, because what happened was, while Pluto was in Capricorn, we got very focused on building economy, and this created this very individualized living, right? And now we're at the maximum of that, where everyone's isolated from community, right? And now it's like I feel people, they want to engage with community again. And they think in Europe, they're much more communitarian than in the United States. And there's more time. You don't need as much money, so you can enjoy more.
So there may be a slight difference, most likely, but yet I would be inclined to consider that we have a common disease in the Western world, generally speaking, whatever it would be in Europe or North America or Australia, but I could call individualism, which
Absolutely.
which
But
reached a point where there's even no way to there's no solidarity, no way to communicate, and yet we are engaging ourselves into a climate of survival.
no, that's for sure. I think we're at it seems like we're at the pinnacle of these lonely lives right now.
So, how you see from the point of view of the astrologer as an influence this how this bubble of individualism gonna burst?
Well, I think that we have this complexity of that things still seem like we're in medieval times, right? Because we have all this technology, we have all this advancement. Like you and I are talking where you're in France, I'm in New York. We can talk with whoever we want, but at the same time, a lot of the basic infrastructures are just so medieval, right? So there's like these two opposing things where we have access to the entire world, but at the same time, we don't have anything. right? There's these two opposing forces. And then going back astrologically, when Pluto goes into Aquarius, it's like what we've built as a society, it's not serving us anymore. So we built this individualized society that's based on money, and everyone's getting lonelier and lonelier and lonelier, which is causing everyone's mental health to go down, 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 right? Because you and I know that like people's health is really suffering. We both work in the spiritual world. Each day, more and more people need help, or at least they're asking for it. And so for me, when Pluto goes into Aquarius, it's like everything's going to get knocked down again. Like we're going to have to rebuild. The way that we're living is not sustainable. I mean,
So,
we're a
yeah,
communitarian
please.
species. We're a communitarian species. We are herd. We are a herd species.
Often when I talk with my clients, interestingly enough, when I mention the world collective and the necessity to go back to something more collective, people get scared. They are associating being this egregore of this idea, this symbol of being collective to collectivism, maybe some sort of communism, and the loss of their individuality and ability to express themselves as an individual with its own peculiarities.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and it also makes me think like, right? I don't know, hundreds of years. I'm not a historian, but a long time ago, we were a community society, right? We only survived because of community. We could not have lived through storms and droughts and lack of food if we had not been a community society, right? It was the only way that we survived. And now we push through to this individualized society and everyone's alone, and that has failed us now. That is starting to really fail us. There has to be some sort of middle ground.
There, there's a lot of topic which going to be mentioned during this conversation, but first, maybe let's start with the influence from up above, and then maybe we can decline it to the consequences down below.
But
We
you
are,
see,
yeah,
for me, there's no difference.
there's
Okay.
a there's are intricate,
Yeah.
of course, obviously, but yet I would like to put some light on the idea that this switching from the end of a circle, according to some, the circle is something about 12,000 years, 20,000 years. According to others, it's even more. It would be a circle of 60,000 years whatsoever. Like, that history and civilizations are evolving throughout circles, but energies as well. And we are entering the era of the Aquarius, and the frequencies, the energetical frequencies, the resonance, the vibrations are changing, and it gets an influence in our body, in our nervous system. It's not necessarily consciously understood, but the energetical frequency is changing, and it could be the cause as well, and it could be considered eventually as consequences without cause. Um, People get overwhelmed. They feel emotionally that intuitionally, something is changing,
Hmm.
and they get overwhelmed. They freaking out. How would you comment that?
Like, how do I
What,
see that, or what can they do for that?
I mean, Where does it gonna lead us from in terms of vibrations, frequencies?
Well, Pluto in Aquarius to me means that ultimately the collective is going to become free, right? That's what it means to me. That over the next years, we're going to become more and more free. But before you become free, you have to know that you're chained, right? So I see the progression of the frequencies um, as growing more positive, but right before the positive comes, there has to be the acknowledgement of the chains that we're being held down by, whether it's trauma, whether it's government, whether it's economy, whether it's environmental devastation, right? But when we know that there's a problem, then we can fix it. And that for me is Pluto and Aquarius. It's like the rising up. So as you work, I think you're more comfortable using terms like frequency and energy, and maybe that's not the vocabulary I use, but I think that translates to what you're saying, right?
I mean, we cannot deny the influence of the planets. There is something which is called attraction, electricity, and magnetism. So necessarily, the position of the planets are exerting an influence. Would you consider it's the eighth planet Nibiru in your when you're doing some writing down those equations for your predictions, or Nibiru is not included?
I don't use it when I do my predictions.
Okay.
I only include the asteroid Chiron or Chiron, however you say it, and and even some astrologers will say if you include one asteroid, you have to include all of them, right? So
Uh-huh.
it's tricky. So can you include one and not the rest and the influence that they're making? And so a lot of different astrologers, they use different forms of astrology is symbolism, right? It's being able to read signs. It's you can equate it to tarot, you can equate it to whatever you want. Reading tea leaves, coffee grinds, whatever. It's the ability to see symbols and understand the meaning behind the symbols, right? So I studied astrology. I've studied astrology for about 15 years. I think I've read about 4,000 charts. I'm a much more individual astrologer, so I like to see your story, right? Your story showing up in this world, right? How are you showing up? How are all these energies influencing your personal story, right? But then ultimately, your personal story is everybody's story because that's the collective, right?
You're mentioning the possibility to mix astrologies. Would you personally consider the Chinese zodiac as well?
I don't personally, I don't use it.
Okay.
Okay, but I do know other astrologers who mix everything, human design, tarot, whatever. For me, I just use, you know, the planetary system that we have, the moon, the time that you're born, what the sky looked like, and how the sky is moving and compared to the natal chart, right? How everything was designed when you were born. And that is how I access my information.
So let's delve towards the individual then, um, such as we are living this realm of transformations. Economy is uh, is shifting as well. We have the rising now of the AI, artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
which is making somehow an economical revolution. A lot of people which were included in the upper middle class are losing their jobs because their activities become suddenly not meaningless, but it could be replaced by a robot. And then there's 10% of the worldwide population are losing the power, influence, and purchasing power as well. So then we are switching to some hardcore new kind of techno-feudalism, where pretty much 1% of the population gonna own all the wealth, and the 99 other percent gonna be the laborers of the world, and quite large majority. So really that leads us to a scenario close to the movie Elysium, where there's 1% because a life on Earth going to be too dangerous for them. They're going to move on the satellites and build some comfortable, I don't know, artificial world where they would be secured and all the labors would remain in Earth. Or would it lead us to some radical change where the relationship with money gonna be different? That's a question. I mean, I would tend to be optimistic because I like optimism.
Me too.
But in this atmosphere, in these climates, how can we individually cope with change, considering our zodiac?
Well, that brings up a couple things. So when I look at people's individual charts, so based on the time you're born, like there's this wheel, right? And it turns and all the signs turn, right? I'm not going to explain it all now, but I love to see how Pluto entering an Aquarius is affecting individual people. So if I look at your chart today, I'll be like, oh, where does he have Aquarius on his chart? It is in his sixth house. Does he have for the next 20 something years? He has to serve the collective. Or other people are like, oh, it's my time to find love finally, because the way Pluto and Aquarius is affecting me is that through my individualism, I'm going to connect to another person intimately. Or other people, it's like business is going to be booming for the next 20 years. Depends. Like, oh, he works in AI, so his business is going to explode. So you can see how these energies affect each individual, which is what I love, right? I love people to come to me and be like, help me understand my story. What is my purpose? Why am I here? What do I have to be careful of?
Does this time of adaptation would be easier for the earth sign, the fire signs, water signs, or air?
Well, if you're very Aquarian, which is an air sign, you're going to have massive wake up, right? You're going to have like your awakening, right? Pluto will ultimately touch your sun, right? Because if your sun is in Aquarius or your moon is in Aquarius, you're going to have massive, massive changes, right? So if you have a chart with a lot of aspects in Aquarius, you're going to have massive change. Or if you have it in the opposite sign, right? So but it's gonna hit everybody. It's gonna hit everybody. There's no escape. It's just the way it's gonna hit you is gonna be unique to you and your life story and who your parents were and how you came into the world and where are your values. Because everybody has Aquarius on their map, just like everybody has Saturn, everybody has Uranus, right? And I think it's so interesting to see how it's going to affect everyone. You know, like I personally, I have Aquarius in my sixth house. The sixth house is the house of Virgo. It's the house of service work. So I'm like, okay, I have no choice. I'm going to have to work a lot for the next 20 something years. Like that is what my life, my destiny is calling me to do during this massive shift. And if we look at your chart, I'm sure it would be somewhere between the 6th and the 10th or the 5th where you have, you know where Aquarius crosses in your chart by chance?
No, I'm a double Sagittarius, and the moon is on Cancer.
Oh, really? My moon is in Cancer as well. So, I mean, when your moon is in Cancer, You have a deep love inside of you, right? That's why you don't give up on humanity. You would never. Your humanity is your child.
Hmm. And the Sagittarius,
Sagittarius is like you're a man of the world. You are of the world.
you places and civilizations and cities are influenced by some particular signs. For instance, Paris is influenced by the Virgo, London by the Gemini.
Yeah.
I know that um, Morocco is influenced by the Scorpio and so forth.
Because there's
How would
different signs that cross different countries, right? There's a debate that the United States is either Pisces or Aquarius. So if it was Aquarius, that is why up until now, the US was leading a lot of the new changes. It was the new world, right? Aquarius is
Mhm.
the new world. So it's where all the innovation comes from, right? And then there was theories that, like the Middle East was Taurus, which is where all the structure comes from, which is why all the oil is from there, right? Because they're basically feeding the world right now. They're our food source in a way, right? And so I'm
What about China?
going to check it now. But obviously, we know that China is, is pushing all the global change.
But there is something with China which is now at the top of the high tech of the technologies,
Mm-hmm.
and yet it's a world which is whatever it wants or not get influenced with the young generations get influenced by the ideas of democracy, freedom of speech, and so forth. It would go slow, but yet what I can consider is that we have a block on mankind, which is 1.5 billion people, yeah, which is deprived of the ability and allowance to practice any form of spirituality. And in my opinion, this couldn't last forever. And I see in that an entropy. You know what I mean? A concentration of materialistic energies, which is creating some kind of inerrancy, and this is a bubble of energy which would burst. I know for sure that many Chinese are secretly nourishing the first to access to spirituality, and they don't have the same way to connect themselves with internet to the worldwide, because the Chinese internet is closed just on China. It would be, in my opinion, interesting to see which kind of energies and planets are driving and signs are driving China, because how does it gonna evolve? I pretty guess that it's gonna evolve on a interesting way.
Oh, for sure. It's funny because I have a list of all the signs here in the countries, and
So
like
what does it say?
yeah, it says that
I'm pretty curious.
yeah, China's like scorpionic.
No.
So, it's gonna just constantly transform.
Yeah, but like, yet it's extremely intense and always running through a razor blade, like always borderline.
Yeah, the whole thing is that like whoever can transform and change survives. That
Of
is the truth,
course.
right? You know that. So the countries that are going to be able to keep changing and evolving are always going to survive. just like the humans. Like, and that's the whole thing about Pluto. So Pluto, when you have to understand the complexities of Pluto and Aquarius, it's like if is the snake that constantly sheds its skin, or the Scorpio, which is its traditional, animal part.
So Pluto is associated with Scorpio.
Scorpio, yes.
Okay.
So Pluto is
Oh my God.
Scorpio.
Oh.
Okay, so it's the eighth house. So Pluto is is the constant changer. What does the Scorpio do? It sheds its skin. It um, Snakes are very associated with Scorpio. What do? They shed their skin. They're not stuck, right? They and when this is very important to and I am explaining this because this is how you understand astrology. You have to understand the myth behind the signs. What are their stories? So Scorpio, it'll retreat, it'll shed its skin, and it will come out renewed, right? This is why it just has this longevity. It's constantly in the rebirth death cycle. Okay, that is the sign. That is the essence of Scorpio. So when you're a person who has a lot of Scorpio in your chart, you have no choice but to have be the cat of nine lives. You have this constant change, and you have to confront the change, and it's scary, and you can't be afraid. And a lot of Scorpios, you'll see they'll be really withdrawn because they don't want to be having this visibility on them when they're going through their metamorphosis. And so, and then if you understand Aquarius, because that's what we're really talking about, Aquarius is Uranus. It's the 11th house in astrology. It's the collective. It is the community. It's the people, right? So when you mix these two energies, because that's all we're doing, we're just overlapping the energy of Pluto in the energy, or the energy of Scorpio in the energy of Aquarius, which is Pluto and Aquarius. And it demands the death of the collective. So because we want the opening, right? I think what you really believe and what I feel from you when you're speaking is that you have this great hope for society. That's what I feel when I speak to you. Is this true?
Yeah, I would say that I genuinely think that we are directing ourselves toward a new millennium, which would be less materialistic, way more spiritual,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
more subtle. My senses are paradoxical because at this moment, at this point, humans are really animalistic, don't they? They are really primitive, and it kind of leads us this transformation couldn't occur without drama,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of
Well, there's no change without drama. Sometimes I'll say to a client, then they tell me, "Oh, I'm going to divorce my wife," but I don't want it to hurt. And I'll say, it's impossible that it's not going to hurt. There's no way to do this without pain. Okay. A snake doesn't shed its skin without a little discomfort. You don't have spiritual growth without hitting, which we've talked about before, hitting sometimes rock bottom, right? So there is this necessary, which is like the rite of passage, that there's gonna have to be friction. And that's what we're all feeling right now, which is what you spoke about in the beginning of our conversation, is that society's anxious. There's a lot of depression right now. People are lost. People are scared. That's why they're reaching out to mentors. That's why they're reaching out to therapists and spiritual guides. And spirituality is on an all-time growth. But then, of course, when something is becoming so demanded, that means there's a lot of it suddenly, and then we have to weed out kind of the bad spirituality, because there's that too, which I like to talk about too, because a lot of people are selling false stories to save humanity, which is also going to be revealed, right? A lot of people say now that the age of the guru is gone. That would be very Pluto in Capricorn, where there was this one figure who led, whether it was the priests or it was the presidents or were the gurus from India or from wherever, right? So that's very, for me, Pluto in a Capricorn. That age is over.
And how would it look like then with Pluto in Aquarius?
it means it's all of us. You know, it makes me think a lot about how, like, we talk about this individualized society that we're all living in. We're all kind of like in our houses and we're shut down. But then at the same time, we're all online and we're talking to people all over the world. And how many texting and chats and groups that we're in, right? Because it's like the development of this new society, this new culture. Just because we're not you know, the age of Aquarius too is the acceptance of technology, right? You and I are doing this right now because this exists. We're not going to put this tool away, right? This is a tool we have. Speaking together, having some people listen to us. This is a tool. So this is accepting too the age of Aquarius. It's a technological age, but like with any weapon or any gift, you have to know how to use it.
So what about love and relationships, which is a topic which is quite fostered in astrology, as we know. We know that the Aquarius is nourishing a taste for freedom in terms of relationship. The Aquarius doesn't like to be owned and locked in a cell or relationship or even in a family cell.
I mean, we can just look at statistics, right?
Yeah.
In the end, if the astrology isn't relevant, like in the world, it doesn't matter. So like I see a lot of astrologers talk about these crazy planetary shifts, but like what is that telling us? How are you feeling that in your skin, right? If I tell someone, a client, oh, your natal chart is like this and this and this, and this is not what they feel, then that information is useless, right? Because I have to read who's in front of me. So when we talk about love, like, of course, what do I intuit about Pluto going into Aquarius? That a lot of these a lot of old structures, they're gonna become redundant. Okay. Now I'm not trying to scare everyone out there who's married and etc. But these kind of infrastructures existed to keep us safe before. Yeah.
That's exactly the point that I wanted to mention.
Yeah. So I do think that I have more and more clients, for example, that talk about being polyamorous. This was something I didn't hear about before so much like I do now. Now I'm dealing with people all the time deciding if their nature based on their natal chart is appropriate for polyamory. And I have to guide my client in the best way to see if they're actually able to evolve in this manner. Now, someone who has a lot of Taurus on their chart or fixed earth signs, they're not going to be adapting to this change as easily, right? So they're going to have to take it slower. Maybe they're just a little bit, it's like antique shops exist, right? Some people love antique shops. They love them. They don't want the new stuff. They like the old, and that's okay because I think there's always space for that. But
So
the general movement is
at
towards
some moment we're gonna find out a point of
yeah.
balance in all that, because here, okay, I can sense that we're touching such a topic, and there's a lot to say. So at the moment, you told me that you had such a great success in Spain and Portugal for all your activities as a yoga teacher. In Spain, we have one of the highest rates of divorce, 90%.
I think Portugal is very high as well.
And Portugal is the highest in the world.
Oh, okay, yeah.
95%.
How is France?
I don't know. Surely
Really
some
high.
very high rates.
Sure, yeah. What country is not high?
I mean, weirdly enough, UK most likely has a lower rate of divorce.
I think the US has a very high rate of marriage too. It seems, I haven't studied this, but it just seems like everyone here is very much into marriage and having their engagement ring much more than I noticed in Europe.
And so times are changing. Okay, the civilization, the economy, we've been through that. It's changing, but then affective relationship's going to change as well. The way that we consider love, affection, relationships, strings attached, and so forth. So the marriage, the traditional structure, family, okay, maybe it's outmoded. I mean, why not? We can struggle against the change, isn't it? And then we were mentioning the polyamorous model.
Hmm.
Okay, well, we can refer to Jean-Paul Sartre and
I'm not,
Simone
I'm
de.
not, I don't know him, but please tell me.
Uh, I mean, Jean-Paul Sartre, the French philosopher, was the husband of Simone de Beauvoir, which was the founder of feminism, feminist movement
In France.
in France, 60s, and it was quite conceptual, but they did instigate on a modern way because we have to keep in mind that monogamy is not a natural model for humans.
Exactly.
It is.
It was a great model for this economic shift that we went into.
Yes, the consideration with marriages and was intricated with the idea of ownership and property. And marriage has been reinforced and reinstigated vigorously at the very beginning, just out of antiquity and entering feudalism. At the beginning of the Middle Age, we did instaurate the institution of a marriage that the owner of a land could provide a legacy to his spawn. And through this tradition, we see the birth of the feminist movement in France in the 60s, and the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre and and his lover Simone de Beauvoir, because they were not married, were practicing something which is called, and it's a French name, therefore, the ménage à trois.
We all know that phrase, I think. It's a global, I think France is famous for that phrase.
But then another a man which was practicing that, but on a way which was way more structured, was the Professor Marston, which was an American teacher, which was practicing the ménage à trois, but not on a way that it was conceptual or a manner to experience something and see where it leads. But he was effectively on through some relationship with his wife, with children, and one of his students, which was a young woman. And they all started to live together and raise a family, but on a very structured and traditional way, which is not a matter of concept, neither an influence. Why the Professor Master and the Professor Master has been fired from this university because it was on the 50s, so
And they
before
weren't,
Jean-Paul
they didn't,
Sartre.
because of his home life practices?
Because of his home life practices, he has been fired from the university, so he had to find a job. And he started to write a comic book, which became quite famous. It was Wonder Woman.
Hmm. Very cool.
And Wonder Woman, I mean, there's a lot of references to his personal life in the early comic book. But why I was mentioning that, because we're talking about polyamorous, and I met a woman when I was in Canada, in Toronto, a young woman. And God knows that Canada is pretty open-minded, maybe liberal, but on the sense that people are free to do whatever they want, and everything is commonly accepted. A woman, I had a conversation with a young woman on a bar, which was mentioning that she was polyamorous, and she was dating a different guy every day of the week, and every day was related to one day was related to Mark, another to Louis, and so forth.
What a woman,
And
huh?
she appeared to me, as a psychologist, she appeared to me to be completely dismantled, disbanded, and lost
Really?
in her affectional repairs. She was quite enthusiastic to have this freedom to do whatever they want. She wants, but I can sense underneath some total loss of repairs and an anxiety which is not expressed, and which pushed her to some excess.
Well, I mean, being polyamorous in a monogamous world is already a tricky trajectory, right? Because there's kind of no rules. If we lived in a polyamorous world, we'd probably have all these rules like, oh, they can't be from the same blah, 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 or, there's an order, right? Because everything sort of needs order. And so when you're kind of living a way that's not traditional, you're always going to pay. There's always going to be this dismantling, right? But I mean, I'm an astrologer. So as an astrologer, I'm going to use the tools that I have in my toolbox, which is, what does your natal map say? Like me, for example, I have Venus in Taurus. I have Mars in Leo. These are not really traditionally polyamorous placements for Venus and Mars. Okay, because Venus and Mars in a person's natal chart is your femininity, it's your masculinity, just like the yin yang, like the Shiva Shakti. It's all this combination of the masculine and feminine. So I have to see, so me as a woman, when I have Venus in Taurus, there's a big loyalty in me, because Taurus is the old, right? Taurus is more earth sign, it's more.
May I ask you which is your sign as a base, your
Yes,
zodiac as a
I'm
base?
I'm Aries.
Okay, your Aries, and
Rising
the
sign is
rising
Virgo.
sign
I'm
is,
Virgo rising sign, and I also have my moon in Cancer.
oh, Aries and Virgo as a rising sign.
Tricky combo.
But does this combo isn't somehow conflictual
I
as
wouldn't
far
say
as
I
the
wouldn't say it's conflictual. I would say that it's very energetic, right? Because Aries is a
that for
very,
sure? Yeah,
very,
yes.
very straightforward, energetic sign ruled by Mars. We have a lot of we have a lot of courage, right? There's a lot of courage there, blindness. I always call it like the infant of the zodiac. It's like a baby. If a baby's uncomfortable, what does it do? It screams, right? There's no stopping it. It doesn't have a filter. Aries is very equatable to an infant. It's the first sign of the zodiac. It's spring. It's the new beginning, right? So if I'm Aries, and my rising sign is Virgo. Virgo is much more pragmatic. It's like there's a system. I have to try really hard. Like I have all the check, 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 right? So if I combine these two things, it can be someone who's just too hungry, right? There's a drive that you can't stop them, right? Which then can cause exhaustion and burnout and the problems with someone who never stops, right? And then my moon is in Cancer, which you know because your emotions are in Cancer, which is a very loving, maternal. I call it like the mother moon, right? It's the most loving moon sign, depending on the aspects, but it's very nourishing. So, when you see someone, you have to combine all the aspects and not identify overly one part, right? So you make this puzzle. It's like eating a cake, right? You don't eat the cake, which is the base. You want the filling, you want the next layer, and you want the frosting. So being able to look at a natal chart is tasting the entire cake at once, not just the frosting. Do you get what I'm saying?
Does it lead to some excess, or w-
What?
would it lead to some difficulty to digest all which has been ingested. You were mentioning the will to eat all the cake in one time.
No, no, that's not what I was saying. I was saying that like to see a natal map, you need to like put all the flavors together, all the parts together, like in a cake. Okay. But an Aries Virgo would be somebody who's a little excessive, right? They're too driven. They're too perfectionist. You know, I think Virgo rising is a very hard rising sign because it means that for me, the rising sign in astrology is the impression. It was like the pressure made in childhood that creates this mask, right? You show up to the world with this mask on, but it's not really you because that's how you survived your childhood home, right? So for me, as a Virgo rising, I had to be very responsible as a young person. So I do everything very perfectly, right? And then you combine it with the Aries fire, and that can be a little bit like, you know, can be overpowering. But getting back to the polyamory, I wouldn't
And
be the best.
the
Yeah.
ability to each sign to cope this change of this new deal of affectional relationships. Please,
No,
please.
no, yeah. So for me, when I look a lot at someone's sexuality and their ability to love, I'm going to look a lot at their Mars sign, their Venus sign, their moon sign, and see, do they have what it takes to be polyamorous? You know, can they be the multifaceted lover? You know, can they have multiple partners? Can they be with many people? Or are they a traditionalist? Right. And that's what we have to evaluate. So sometimes I'll have clients that are trying to be polyamorous, and it's really difficult for them because they are kind of traditionalists, and it's very scary for them. And then I have other clients that are trying to be monogamous and failing miserably, right? And then I will evaluate the chart to see, okay, this is what's going on. I don't know if this is your nature, right? But as Pluto goes into Aquarius, we're going to all be pushed to reevaluate what were the constraints or what were the infrastructures we've been living by. So we're going to have to change a little bit. And as you know, when we transform and change, some of us suffer more and some of us suffer less. What is your opinion on polyamory? You saw this woman has very suffered that you met in Canada. So I'm assuming that you feel it's a
There is, there's in everything there's our excess and a balance and excesses. Um, the action of Simone de Beauvoir during the 60s and the emulation of feminism was, in my sense, something excellent, maybe in slightly too much paternal society. A woman has to find a place, and it's balancing with the story of the Professor Marston, because the wife of the Professor Marston was they were both psychologists, I guess, but she didn't have a right to teach as a woman. So then the concept of monogamy is re-evaluated nowadays, and it makes me think about the rise of psychoanalysis in the beginning of the 20th century. Different schools, Sigmund Freud putting the basis, what is conscious, unconscious, the mother figure, and so forth. The deep. Carl Jung, which was more attracted by spirituality,
yeah,
mysticism.
he used astrology with his patients.
Absolutely, and there was this conflict, visceral conflict, by essence, between Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, because Sigmund Freud was materialistic and he was seeing his own religion, which was the Jewish religions, as a matter of symbolism, with Moses as a father figure, but not as a mystic. And between them, there was a satellite, a lot of other psychoanalysts, which were like in total experiments, less known. But yes, some of them were considering that there is a human pulsion, um, a will to naturally have a sexual relationship with many people on a day, and what being restrained. And they were considering that we have to respect our impulse, and it leads to some of them to be what would be the term for a man for nymphomaniac, like sexual addict?
Yeah. Yeah,
Sometimes
it's
using
funny because there's no exact term for a man for that, right? Because it's just accepted that he can be, but if a woman is, then she's a crazy.
and they psychoanalysts were encouraging their patient, woman patient, because we're talking about the Austrian bourgeoisie
Yeah.
at the time, which was a
Society.
very classical realm. And they were encouraging the women of the Austrian bourgeoisie to follow their mentorship and their concept, and allow themselves to have an open relationship, a sexual intercourse with anyone they want during the day, and there's no one to judge them. So,
It was medically prescribed.
one step further, Carl Jung did marry one of his patients, which could be considered today after extremely weird, because there's some rules has been instigated in
Yeah.
the realm of psychoanalysis. So at the end of the day, the sexual intercourses leads women to often get pregnant, and
Ha ha ha, big surprise.
their children to rise. So we are. I mean, there's a balance. Some boundaries has to be pushed in order to make a thing that evolves, but it could be sane only if there's a balance, and if a conservative point of view wants to temper uh, this new ground which has been instigated and conquered. So that's why I was referring to the Professor Marston, and making this balance between this woman, which was on the excess to um, be quite enthusiastic to date a different man every day because
Yeah.
she can.
I mean, and also you're making me think about, okay, like we're talking about polyamory in a sexual way, but then, and like at first everyone's going to be like, okay, having sex with various people at once, but like polyamory in the end is what it is saying, that you can be in love with more than one person simultaneously, which is like,
Exactly.
so, let's talk about that, because as Pluto goes
Because
into Aquarius, I don't know what that means for love. I have two teenage daughters. And so in the end, it's like the people are going to show us what's happening, right? It only matters what the people are actually living. All our thoughts and theories mean nothing if it's not actually happening in the collective. So I have two young daughters, and they're kind of in this age where it's like, does love exist anymore? Is love a thing?
huh,
Is this outdated? Is this some old construct? Does it even exist? Love doesn't happen, So it's like, I don't know. Do you know? What's love? Can you be polyamorous? Can you love various people at the same time? I mean, I don't know. There's a few people watching this live. What is your opinion on polyamory and loving more than one? Or, you know, I'm curious because it's the collective that's going to speak and is going to be the proof of the change.
I mean, yeah, I don't see any comments. People are just sending emojis and
Yeah.
nothing relevant at the moment. But maybe there's a long file of people watching, so I cannot check all of them. Exactly, because in a matter of fact, it's a psychological psychological question, and a question of repose, and it leads us back to the idea of the collective. Um, and as I was mentioning, I like to make this parallel between the Professor Maston and his polyamorous family, and they had ah yeah, middle ground, creativity, individual trait, community approach, maybe the best means for survival. Okay, we're on the previous topic. Um, there were three people, and they were raising 4 to 5 children. So, and I mean, I have to mention it. The wife of the Professor Maston and the second wife were in parallel lovers. So that's why we are talking here about some sort of collective relationship, because it's involved more than two people. Yet before the Middle Age, we know for sure that it was a model which was way more
Common.
common than the way that it appeared after the beginning of feudalism. You were mentioning rules, and we feel locked and restrained by rules, because we feel that we cannot express our sensitivity. And yet, I like to I prefer the term structures.
Okay, then rules. Okay.
Meaning that our psyche is made by repairs, and our psyche is a body by itself, what we call in esotericism the subtle body, understanding our memories, our emotions and senses. And our thoughts are organized. What we can call a personality is just a collection of repairs, such as columns. And we're talking about traumas when these columns are, which is happening now at the era of the Aquarius. Those columns are shifting. So we don't know exactly which is our mental mechanism, because it's not necessarily relevant anymore. So we have a family structure with several people and children, which have strings attached, and some kind of affectional commitments. It's different from what we know, but it's structured. So they were suffering from a pressure of the outside society, but each side of their family cell, everything was harmonious, just maybe different and more modern. Then I'm referring to something that I felt as an excess, or maybe an experience. I mean, you can be experimental, but an excess, because I felt by experience that someone gonna hit a wall on some point, or someone is already hitting a wall without knowing it. This woman is dating a different man every day. She's enjoying this colorful variety of different personality, different mans, and enjoying one from another. But then I see no repairs, no structures.
Also because, when you're doing something outside of the guidelines of society, it's always tricky because, you know what I mean? You're going against the current. If we were born into a polygamous society, we wouldn't question it. We'd be like, oh, this is the way it rolls. You know what I mean? Like, this is just, so when it's like such a contrast, the contrast is creating the problem. I don't know what is the nature, the actual nature of, like in animals, we know if they're monogamous or they have multi mates, right? We know that. We study the animals. They're like that. Nobody questions it. Some animals are monogamous and some animals aren't. And you know what I mean? But like, what was the real nature of the human? We can't really conceptualize that because we're conscious, right? So we're not static. We're constantly changing and evolving, and our system can move forward. I mean, that's what we're talking about, consciousness. So if you go into polygamy with a lot of consciousness and you know exactly what you're doing, you know exactly what you're expecting, then maybe it can work for you. But if you go into it being like, I don't know what this is, I just want to try it, then it can be destabilizing.
The question is tricky because as monkeys, we used to function over this game of one male will date 10 women, and the other males are destined to be single. I mean, we have been functioning like that during millions of years, and our cognitive functions and our brain unconsciously continue to function on this way. And the pressure of society asking us to organize ourselves differently and being monogamous is a trauma on a large scale, of course.
Which is why so many people are failing at it, right? Which is why when you showed the statistics for marriage, they're so astounding.
I mean,
But that's Pluto
we're talking.
and Aquarius. It's the overthrowing of systems that maybe made sense for materialism, right? Because this is what we're talking away from, the movement from materialism into a different consciousness. And so like these things were all based on materialism, they're just not going to work anymore, and they're failing us. Because in the end, like you said, we're primitive species. We're always going to act on impulse.
And then there's we can put on the table the question of the spiritual influence. How much spirituality could influence the way that we engage ourselves through our relationships?
Yeah. I mean, I know I was married for a long time and I'm not married anymore, so I have the experience of that. And if someone asks me now, because you and I, we're part of Pluto and Aquarius. We all are, right? So we are the truth that's coming, right? So that's why we can have this talk. And then we're a reflection of that. So it's like when you ask me now, what do I want in a relationship? Well, I want a conscious relationship. That's the only thing I want. I wouldn't even have said that 20 years. I didn't know what that meant.
So what would you call, if I may ask, a conscious relationship?
That we're trying to be as honest as possible about who we are at all times. And that there's also this sensation of growth where we're both like, we are growing towards consciousness. What is consciousness? It is to know, right? Unconscious is to not know, right? It's there, but we can't access it. So consciousness is to know, to see, to say, to feel, to do, right? So I want to do things in a way that whatever the structures are of the relationship, that they're spoken about, right? And they're not stuck. It can change over time. And that there's a striving for growth, for personal growth. I mean, that's why most relationships fail, is one person wants to keep growing and the other person doesn't want to grow, right? So, bringing it back to the astrology of the situation in Pluto and Aquarius is that the whole culture wants to grow now. So if you don't want to grow, you're going to be left behind. And there will ultimately be people that become left behind, because that's, that's Darwin, that's people being eliminated from the conscious evolution.
So we are talking about an open speech in the relationship, the ability to reconsider constantly the terms of the relationships and its reverse, its structure, how it works. And the question, I mean, I don't pretend that I have the answer, but often the answer is on the question, as we say, where is the place for authority in this relationship?
Yeah, I mean, if you say it like, so there's like an equal authority, right? Is that what you're saying? What do you mean by that exactly? Like, who has the authority?
I mean that ultimately, what is the reason of
Of the
the merging
relationship.
of a relationship?
Well, it could be many reasons. It can be sexual, it can be emotional growth, it can be support, it can be a combination, multifactored.
Maybe the answer lies on the way that the fruit of this relationship, which are the children's, how would they be educated? Would you consider that children could be educated without any forms of authority?
Well, I know there's a lot of people doing that, called like free parenting or something. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people trying to do this
Do you
non-authoritative,
endorse that?
What? Do I endorse it?
Yeah.
I don't endorse or not endorse. Am I capable of it? No. It's like people ask me if I homeschool my kids. I know that I'm not capable of homeschooling, so I don't do it. Maybe it's better for them. It's probably better for them in a way, but I don't have the capacity to do it, so I don't do it.
I wasn't associating free parenting with homeschooling, but more the idea that we don't put any limitations
Mm.
to the children, and there's no authority, and they are free to make their own experiences, whatever it is, and never being strict, and rather scolding them when they're doing something which is dangerous for them, very gently and kindly explaining to them why it's wrong.
Yeah, I think that's probably how I raise my kids. And a lot of people don't like that.
Okay.
But I can tell you the consequence of it,
Mm-hmm.
which is, yes, do I have rebellious children? Do they say they don't want to do certain things? Do they say they don't like school? Do they admit that this certain aspects to the society are very boring? Yes. Do they tell me about all their lovers and their private life? Absolutely, because I've created an atmosphere where everything's okay to say. But, that means that sometimes people come to my house and they're like, wow, this is intense because these kids just tell you how it is, which,
Mm-hmm.
as we are based on these old paradigms of education where the kids stayed quiet and they ate at another table, they didn't participate in adult conversation. I would say what it means to me is that I value my children's opinion.
I wouldn't express a particular opinion about that.
Mm.
Um, but what is interesting to put on the table is that we are shifting, and that's where it becomes really interesting in my sense. We are shifting towards the era of the Aquarius. So we are shifting from an era which has been maybe around 5,000 years easily, really dominated by the father figure. And the sacred is represented by the man, priest, man with a beard. authority of the guardian of the values is incarnated by a man. And that connection is good. Now we are shifting to the era of the Aquarius, which is re-establishing the value of the woman in its sacred potential, and the rising of the comeback of the sacred feminine. The sacred is not necessarily expressed by the father, but could be expressed by the mother, and the mother could be the guardian of values, which was, for instance, in ancient civilization, whatever, it was the Greeks with the Pity of Delphs, or in Egypt, the woman was the guardian of mystical values. But then I'm coming back to our topic, the rise of the children, and in order to get some psychological repair, the best for a child would be to have a father figure and a mother figure, and often both figures, for instance, if children are raised by their mother only, if a couple is divorced, a woman has the charge to represent symbolically the father figure and the mother figure, which is, for instance, extremely easy for German women, but in other cultures it's slightly more difficult. It depends. But the question is here, in a society which did go so far with the will to exterminate the value and the legitimacy,
Legitimacy.
the legitimacy of the father figure, what would be the place of this father figure in this new era, the era of the Aquarius? You see my point.
I get to see your point exactly. But yeah, but that is exactly what the Age of Aquarius is. It would be the extermination of the idea that either the mother or the father were the rulers. It would be a more equal rulership, or equal guardianship, or equal, everything becomes equalized. Because it's the community that's going to drive everything. It's the people. It's the common collective. It's the common goals of society. But yeah, but the whole thing is to be able to move away from the patriarchal, because that's what you're describing, in fact, right? Society. We go into the matriarchal.
Does the era of Aquarius necessarily leads us to the matriarchal?
I think it leads us to a more equal. But what I'm trying to say,
balance.
what I'm trying to say is that because we're coming from the patriarchal, to get to a balance, we have to go first to the matriarchal again. Because you don't go to balance, you swing, right? So we were in the patriarchal and the father ruled system, and now we swung more into the matriarchal, and then eventually at the end of the Pluto and Aquarius, it should sit more in the center. But that's why there's this huge feminine, not feminist movement now. There's a massive feminine movement taking place. There is the worshiping of the moon again, right? Everybody talks about the moon these days. The menstrual blood. Everything is being led now, especially, you can see this online, by the feminine movement.
There's a lot to say, and I guess it would be the opportunity for us to schedule a new episode. But just in order to to make a conclusion, we would have maybe as a reaper we could consider some figure which could represent the spirit of the new era of the Aquarius. You know that Elon Musk is Aquarius.
I could only assume. I mean, it only is the only thing that would make complete sense.
And
I didn't know that, but to me, it's like obvious, right? It'd be obvious when you say it. It's like, oh, of course he is.
And the era of Aquarius is leading us to a spiritual era, but it's as well as a sign of air, and it will be the expansion for our shuttles and spaceships to some of the planets, and the conquest of the air and space.
And the
So,
technological age.
Technological age. Yet, maybe Elon Musk would maybe embody the technological aspect of the era of Aquarius. Would you see some other figures which could represent this era? A little bit avant-garde.
I don't know.
You know? Okay.
Yeah, but all these technological savvy people. But I mean, then you could just you could bring it to someone like Kim Kardashian. You know what I mean? Like, she's. I say to people when they make fun of the president of the United States and people talk bad about it in Europe, and I'll be like, well, it was either that or Kim Kardashian, because she's basically the next leader in the United States, right? She's pushing the whole society. It's kind of like a joke I'm making, right? But that is like the representation in the society here. You know what I mean?
But
and so it's
doesn't
very
she represent the old world? And
I don't know, does she?
I mean, she's.
I don't think she does.
No?
No.
Doesn't she?
No, absolutely not. She changes husbands. She's gotten rid of her husband. No, I don't think she represents the old world.
I don't know much. I never followed that much I know there's a show about the Kardashians.
Yeah, but I mean, she's a huge influencer. Huge.
I know, yeah, but it's pretty much. I felt that it was pretty junk traffic and maybe a way to sell some makeup product.
But yeah, maybe we should finish here because this is going to go into a new direction.
Yeah, and I'm scared. I wish that the Wi-Fi is still good. So.
And I have to. I do have to admit that I have to do my matriarchal duties, which is 2:00.
So this conversation was extremely rich, extremely dense. We did approach a lot of topics, and yet there's a lot to say. So I would be more than glad to invite you for a next upcoming episode.
Okay.
Where people can reach you in order to purchase your consultations for
right in my Instagram.
So Lea Maria Perfetti.
Lea Maria Perfetti. Yep.
Perfetti.
Perfetti.
Lea Maria Perfetti.
Mm-hmm.
On Instagram.
Thank you so much for having me today, Bruce.
Likewise, your pleasure shared. And I hope we can continue this conversation because we haven't solved some of the mystery of the era of the Aquarius yet.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's happening. It's happening right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.